This lecture is on negotiation as problem solving. And what I'd like to try to communicate in this lecture is just a way of thinking about negotiation from kind of a bird's eye view that allows us to think about it using the same tools and frameworks that we use to think about problem solving from an innovation perspective. So some of you might be familiar with the explore exploit problem in innovation, which means, I'm designing a product and I have the option to either explore, which is to say, invent something new, which requires trial and experimentation, or I can exploit by adopting an existing solution from someone in my network. So when we talk about innovation in these terms, what we often talk about is searching a fitness landscape, which means I have maybe a product design in front of me and I can tweak something about that product and that will make it either better or that will make it worse. And we call that searching a fitness landscape because you can imagine yourself tweaking one thing at a time, another thing, and you're slowly navigating through the possible space of solutions to whatever the problem at hand is. And maybe some of the tweaks make you go up, and some of the tweaks make you go down, and some of the tweaks make you go up. So it's kind of a rugged landscape where some things are better, some things are worse. And what can happen is that you can get stuck on what's called a local optimum. So maybe I'm tweaking things in my product and I tweak and I tweak and I tweak until I get it as good as I can. And then I can't change anything without making it worse. We would call that a local optimum. And we call it an optimum because I can't change anything without making it worse. And we call it a local optimum because the implication is that maybe I can change a whole lot of things to find something better, but I can't find that better thing from where I'm at now. So that's a model of problem solving that we call searching a fitness landscape. And in that, we generally assume that people follow a few basic principles of problem solving. One is what we call myopic search, and myopic means short sighted, right? And it means we only change a small number of items at a time. And the reason people do that is because it can be very risky or very costly to change a whole lot at once. You have something, you know it works, you tweak it a little bit. If it doesn't work, you can go back to where you started. If you throw everything out and start over somewhere else, well, you're back to square one. That can be very costly. And then, as people tweak, they see if the new version is better or worse than the old version. If the new version is better, they keep it. If it's worse, they go back to the old version. And then basically people keep working until they've exhausted all the possible solutions, they've run out of time, or they've found a solution that's satisfactory. So that's the basic idea of searching a fitness landscape. So now I want to talk about how I see this model as applying to negotiation. And this is actually something that occurred to me when I myself was participating in a simulated negotiation as a student. And I was also simultaneously doing some research on problem solving uh, that followed this searching a fitness landscape example. And I realized they were very, very similar. So the experience I had in the negotiation was a lot like what we described here in searching a fitness landscape. So think about the simulation that you just did for Fillmore Laws, right? So the characteristics of this simulation are that there's six parties. Everybody wants something a little bit different. And there are five issues on the table. So there's a lot to talk about. And my experience of simulating this, and it'll vary from simulation to simulation. My experience of this was that we had this meeting, we had these people. I was in my role play, I was playing Mayor Gabriel. But what we would do is someone would throw an idea out on the table. We'd all kind of talk about it for a minute. Some people would like it, some people wouldn't. If we didn't get buy-in from enough people, which of course you don't at the beginning of a negotiation, we'd tweak one thing. Someone would say, okay, well, what about if we change this? And then we'd talk about it and see if it was better or worse. If it was worse, we'd go back to the original idea. If it was better, we'd adopt that. Becomes a new starting point. We tweak something from there, and we go forward like that. So my experience in doing this negotiation was that we were navigating the fitness landscape of possible solutions. But it's a particularly complex one. So consider just the issue of maximum building height, right? So if you were having a discussion and there was an idea on the table that involved the maximum building height of for a 500-foot tower, well, Stellar Cove would prefer to make the tower taller. Green Living Collective would prefer to make the tower shorter. The Ilium Group would prefer to make the tower shorter. Mayor Gabriel wants to make it taller, right? So everybody has these conflicting incentives. So it becomes complex because even tweaking one idea is going to improve it for some people, but make it worse for the other people. So that's what makes negotiation for multi-party and multi-issue problems not only like navigating a fitness landscape in terms of problem solving, but it makes it a particularly complex. And complex problems are characterized by the presence of local optima. And it's far outside the scope of this class, but you can actually take this payoff setup right here, this simulation, and you can actually map out the fitness landscape and see that it's possible to get stuck on solutions that maybe would satisfy enough people in terms of getting a majority vote, but they're not optimal, right? So they're satisficing and that, yeah, maybe people would vote for them, but there would be even a better one. And here we would measure optimality either in terms of the number of people who sign on, because even though you can pass it with 5 people, it's better to pass it with 6, right? Or in the joint value, so the sum of everybody's score. So that's just a general overview of how we can think about negotiation as a special case of this more general type of process, this problem solving and navigating the fitness landscape. Now, I want to close by just acknowledging that there are two very distinct perspectives here. So when you are an agent negotiating, when you're playing the role of Stellar Cove or Mayor Gabriel or the Green Living Collective, right? You're acting from the interest of that particular agent, and you want to maximize only that agent's self gain. And to the extent that you do care about, joint gain, it's because you care about things like reputation and future negotiations, right? We are, as rational actors, maximizing whatever our own payoff is. However, if you were to take a step back and imagine yourself looking down at that negotiation table, right? You can look at it as a problem solving perspective that's focused on maximizing joint gain. Now, these two perspectives aren't incompatible, but I highlight them because they're different ways of looking at the problem. And it's only when we kind of look at things from this bird's eye view that we can start to use these tools and frameworks to think about it from a problem solving perspective. But that doesn't mean that as agents, we can't take advantage of some insights from this. For example, there's a very famous paper by David Lazar and Alan Friedman published in Administrative Science Quarterly that shows that for complex problems, you're actually better off slowing down communication for your team, right? It's a counterintuitive result. And the idea is that if people communicate and share information too quickly, they rapidly reach an optimum, but it's a local optimum. Whereas when you slow things down, you search the landscape a little bit more widely. In contrast, for simple problems, right, your best bet is to communicate quickly and you just find that optimum and you just go right up that slope. So we can start bringing in some insights and say, how, if we're in a complex problem, how can we slow things down? How can we give people the opportunity to explore more thoroughly? Well, a lot of the tactics and strategies we've talked about in this course, particularly when it relates to communication skills that come from mediation, are have the effect of slowing things down. We draw things out. We have people talk more carefully and more in depth. So those are just some of the insights that you can start to draw in when you stop looking at negotiation just from the perspective of that one self-interest maximizing agent and take a step back and look at it from this problem solving perspective. And then I'd like to just close finally by remarking very briefly that we are actually in the engineering faculty here, of course. I think it's one of the real strong advantages of the UCL MBA program which means that we can have the opportunity to draw on these more engineering type models where we formalize problems and think about, designing systems, right? That's what a negotiation or mediation is. It's really about designing a system to integrate the information, the preferences, the interests of a whole lot of people at the table to find a solution, hopefully, that works for everybody. And that concludes the lecture, Negotiation as Group Problem Solving.